Well, welcome again, everyone. So today we are going to hear from the folks who have the lead agency Implement First Capacity Building Grant. Big Stone, Clay County, Hennepin, McLeod, Stearns, and St. Louis. So they're all doing some excellent work out there that we thought you all might like to hear about, kind of glean some tips that they might have to share. So, Andrea, do you want to kind of do some introductions for everyone? Kind of go through the
Yeah,
list?
yeah. I just have a couple slides that just kind of gives a little bit of an overview of the grant. So I'll share my screen and set people up just so that everyone kind of is oriented to exactly what they're working on. And then we'll just go through a representative from each of the six lead agencies is here. So they'll each share. My name is Andrea Zuber. I am with the Minnesota Transformation Initiative, or MTI. And I'm just going to share my screen. And I'm hoping that it will go into presentation mode. Okay. Can you all see that?
Yeah, let's get.
Okay, great. So first of all, just really briefly remind everybody, I think you all know what MTI is, but we're funded by the DHS Disability Services Division. We're a statewide training and technical assistance center, and our goal is to support the increase of integrated and competitive employment for people with disabilities across Minnesota. We do that through individualized technical assistance to providers, lead agencies, and we also provide statewide training and peer-to-peer mentoring. So the lead agency capacity building grant is what all of these six counties are. They have this grant, and that's what they're all working on. That grant is also funded by the Minnesota Department of Human Services Disability Services Division, and the goal of the grant is to ultimately increase competitive integrated employment for Minnesotans with disabilities. The focus of the grant is for people ages 16 to 64 who receive home and community-based waiver case management. And the grant supports Minnesota's Employment First vision that employment is possible and expected for everyone. The vision of the grant is that home and community-based services waiver program participants are working and advancing in competitive integrated employment that aligns to their strengths, interests, and needs. And the mission of the grant project is to provide funding and technical assistance to help county and tribal nations build capacity to reach competitive integrated employment outcomes for their program participants. The goals of the grant are to set an employment first, and this is what the lead agencies are doing, set employment first culture, use data to set and monitor goals, build staff capacity, build provider capacity, educate and engage people and their families, strengthen interagency coordination, and innovate and use best practices. So each of the six lead agencies that are part of this grant project have developed an action plan that is guiding their work to make that happen. They have goals to increase employment exploration and employment development plan services, to improve their outreach to underrepresented groups, and to ultimately increase integrated competitive employment. The action plans that they developed have goals based on identified needs. And just a couple examples of what people are working on is really starting with, especially this first year, building that employment first culture, training and skill development for case managers and certified assessors, provider development, engaging people and their families and communities, and then working on that interagency coordination. They're working on laying a lot of foundational work right now. So that's kind of what the project is, what the grant is. The Minnesota Transformation Initiative is providing technical assistance to support each of the lead agencies as they develop and implement their action plans. And they're all here, like I said, to share with you a little bit about what they're working on, and some of the successes and maybe even some challenges that they've had. So I did not talk about an order with all of you, so I'm just going to surprise you, whoever wants to go first. But I know, Beth, you had emailed me that you have another thing that you have conflicting with this, and that you might need to hop off after. So I will have you go first so that you are able to go do your other meeting as well.
Thank you. I am Beth Boland. I'm the social services supervisor for Big Stone County. I supervise managed care, Min Choices, and then all of the waiver programs. And initially when I applied for this grant, the intention was that Big Stone County would hire another social worker, and their responsibilities would be to work on the grant. And unfortunately, with the uncertainty in budgets and things like that, our county board kind of changed their mind on that. So I've been trying to work on it, which poor Andrea and Bob are probably thinking, oh my Lord. Anyway, but actually prior to today, I was thinking like, oh, we've made some big progress or what I feel is big progress in a couple of areas. And then this morning, one of the case managers was in talking about a couple of meetings she's had while I've been out. And so then I'm like, that's like a totally different area. So that was exciting too. And it's just kind of fun to see how happy it makes them, that they've really kind of started focusing on this as well. Big Stone County is way rural Minnesota, about as far west as you can get. And so we have one employment provider in the county. And so there aren't a lot of options for people. And that employment provider was not providing exploration or development at all to any of our consumers. And so one of our goals was that we wanted to increase or to get that in place, the option for people to be able to have that service, because really our transition age youth here were not being served like they could be. If we had those programs, there was like no relationship really between the county case managers and Voc Rehab. The case managers would attend IEP meetings, but Voc Rehab, wasn't there. And then just, I don't think really school personnel or our case managers really understood the whole process and how it should work and what it should look like. And so our first goal was just to work on like a process, what it should look like, who transition age youth would be, kind of what the steps are when they start working with them, who should be involved, and how that looks. And so we had that required training that DHS had, the getting to work a case manager's, I think it was a case manager's guide to employment or something like that. And so I had them all redo that as a group. And then we just talked about like really trying to focus on even one of their clients as, like how could you apply this to them? And just kind of really worked on helping them to become more familiar with employment in general, like what employment exploration is, what employment development is, and all of those things. And so Andrea had recommended a couple of other trainings that they did as well. The Disability Hub had some good trainings. She's had Molly, I can't remember. She was through MTI too, I think, had visited with them some as well. And so like through all that, the case managers have really become much more familiar with kind of what this should look like. And then we came up with a process checklist so they can use that with every person that they have that's in that transition age group, I guess. And so they take out that checklist and they bring it with them to all of their meetings, and just kind of to make sure that the process is being followed and that it's being followed for, or at least trying to follow it, for every one of their consumers on their caseload. And so they have been doing that, and it is working great. The piece about not having a relationship really with the Voc Rehab, it was kind of, we just had this broken process, kind of. It wasn't that Voc Rehab never met with them, but it was kind of like a separate thing. So they would have an IEP case manager, and then they might, touch base with Voc Rehab somewhere else. And none of it was really a very smooth process, and families didn't understand what it was about, or even, why is this person contacting me, and things like that. So to start out, I'd reached out and just got to know our Voc Rehab representative here. It had changed, actually, and we weren't even aware. Like, I had no idea who our Voc Rehab person was, and neither did any of the case managers. And so, we got to know her. She has come out and met with our case managers a few times, and they've gone over kind of what her role is, what the case manager's role is. And then we've started having a meeting between the school staff, the staff here, and then Voc Rehab. So we've done some like individual meetings, and then a group meeting that is going forward, we're gonna do quarterly. But just kind of to talk about this whole process and what it should look like, and who should do what, and, to make that process more smooth. And, initially, I think we were seeing that, like, the case managers at the school and the school administration, I think administration kind of assumed case managers knew the things they were supposed to do, and they didn't. And so, when I would talk with administration, they would say, oh yeah, we're doing that. And then we would, the case manager would get to an IEP meeting, and the family would have no clue what they're talking about. And, the case manager would be like, oh, no, I didn't do that. And, so there was just we're finding all these breaks in communication as you went along. And that's one where this morning, the one case manager was in here, and she's really been working hard on keeping Voc Rehab in there and having these meetings. And normally there's an IEP meeting once a year. And for a couple of her individuals, they've had several IEP meetings with the team, just kind of to work on plans and stuff, because he's 18 and didn't have a plan at all because they hadn't ever worked on it. And so he now, like, they yesterday had a meeting, and like, he really has an awesome plan going forward. And then she had another one whose guardian was not interested in him working at all, like would not consider it. And now through working with the case manager and Voc Rehab, has agreed to start doing employment exploration. And so that was exciting, because I really didn't think that that individual would would consider it, because he really, he's protective. When he's a single parent, and he has a son that, has a disability, and it's like, I'm not going to send him off. In their mind, it's send them off to work somewhere that, they have no idea what this could look like. And so the fact that they've been able to kind of show him that, and get him to give it a try, like, is awesome. And I really think that that goes back to them understanding that process, and like what the employment is about. That community employment doesn't mean that you're sending someone out to work by themselves, and they're supposed to work at the grocery store and make change and, wait on customers. I mean, it can be, there's lots of things. And so kind of having that change in thinking has really been awesome. And then our last thing just was to try to get that exploration and development as something that's available to the consumers here. And a neighboring county has someone that works in their agency that her title is employment specialist, and she does their exploration and development. And so they have, our employment provider is contracting with them to have that service provided at the provider. Main Street Industries is the name of the provider in Big Stone County. And so they are contracting with the provider in the neighboring county to have her services so many hours a month for her to come over and provide that service to the consumers here. And so that we went from 0, like when they ran our initial data, it had to be pretty easy because the number was 0. People who were having exploration or development, and now, I mean, it had increased for us substantially when you're going from 0. But, it's exciting to see that people are actually wanting to look at it and, well, what's it about, and asking questions. And that's kind of, I'm like, that's the first step in moving forward. If they're asking you more questions, that means they're, like it's sparking their interest a little bit. So that's been exciting. We, when I first talked about this grant, I don't think our case managers were real excited about it. And it really has turned around to be something that everyone is really seeing as a positive. So it has been great.
So awesome. Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
I love hearing it. I love hearing about it. So you guys are doing such great work, and Bob and I are not wondering, oh my gosh, what in the world is going on? You are doing amazing work. So thank you for sharing about what you're doing. And it's such a great example of a very small, very rural lead agency and geographical area who didn't have any employment services going on. And because of the grant and because of the work you're doing is now building that. And those youth really are. I remember when we toured the provider there, everyone was a little bit older, and we started hearing, the younger kids really don't want to go there. They really want to start looking at work. And so now you guys are really making that happen and that option available for people. So it's very exciting.
It is.
Thank you. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, and I just have to add, it makes my heart sing that hearing about social workers, I was meeting with some Hennepin County folks yesterday, reminding people that social workers became social workers because they want to make a difference. And nothing makes a difference more than helping people become employed. So, yeah, kudos to you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
This is Beth Groovy from DHS. I just can't not say this. I grew up in Big Stone County. I lived there. I've seen Main Street Industries for all my life. And wow, yay. I am extremely proud and happy that that things are happening. Good job.
Yeah, it is exciting. And, like I said, it kind of takes that to get a spark with someone, and then pretty soon, they're telling someone, and then they're asking about, well, what is that such and such is doing? And so yeah, it's been really fun to see.
All right. We'll have time for questions at the end, so we'll just kind of keep rolling. Thank you, Beth. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go next to Nicole because I see you on my screen with your camera on. So go ahead.
Good morning. I am Nicole. I'm the employment grant social worker here at St. Louis County. Unlike Big Stone County, St. Louis County did approve a full-time position through this grant, and that is my entire role. I am new to St. Louis County, and so my background is in healthcare, being a medical social worker, and so as an LICSW, and so this was a really big learning curve when I began in May. And so bringing a different perspective to employment, not as a case manager or a supervisor. And through our grant, I think the most interesting things that we've worked on are in part due to the unique geographical spread of St. Louis County. As I'm sure many of you know, St. Louis County is the geographically largest county in the state. And east of the Mississippi, I believe. And so you can drive for 250 miles and still be in the county. So that makes it really interesting because we do have the urban area of Duluth. And then there's some smaller cities like Virginia and Hibbing, but those are about an hour away. And then there's a lot of just very, very small communities that used to be much more populous due to mining on the Iron Range, and much of that has diminished, let's say. And so there's still pockets of small communities, but they have very, very limited resources. And the swath of communities in the northern part of the county from Ely to Hibbing or Keewatin is about an hour and a half. And so you can have a provider on the range that provides services only on one side of the range rather than through the whole kind of swath of communities. And so in analyzing that and looking at where case managers are having the hardest time developing employment as a topic with service recipients, it was well known that the range is the most difficult place for people to find work. And the number of employment service providers that do it well in the north are maybe one. And so we approached an agency that is a 245D licensee who has about, they have about, I think, 34, 36 CRS homes on the range, and they provide unit-based services in IHS and respite, but have never delved into employment and didn't have it on their license. And so thankfully, my supervisor is a case management supervisor in the northern part of the county, and she is also the liaison for the 245D moratorium. And so she was able to connect, as she has a really good relationship with this agency, connect them and guide them through that process due to the geographical need rather than a specific service recipient need. And it's been very exciting for this agency to imagine what employment services might look like in their agency as they are really motivated. And actually earlier this week I looked on their website, and last week they're like, I think we got an okay from our board to put up a posting for an associate director of employment services. And I looked this week and it's up, and it's really fun to see how motivated people are. And it's reached case managers, and yesterday a case manager was like, so this agency, when are they gonna be doing it, because everybody's really excited because they do their other services really well. So hopefully that will be something that's catchy for case managers who already trust and an agency that already has a number of service recipients just within their CRS homes and other in-home services. Another challenge, why this is so exciting, is because there's a 14C certificate holder up in the range as well, who have about 100 individuals on service. And it's an easy way it's an easy solution to thinking about employment for both case managers, and it's a really well-respected agency on the range. And so being able to offer a high-quality, true employment service rather than pre-vocational sub-minimum wage services hopeful. And so people are very excited about it. So I would say that's the most exciting aspect of all of this work. And then just seeing that case managers are really starting to bring up the idea of employment. And it's not just day services or IHS or things that are not going to serve people well long term or limit what they can do. And hearing the success stories and the creativity is always very exciting. And it's been shown through our data that our service authorizations have increased by 80% over this first year, which is really, really exciting. And we've done a lot to acknowledge case managers and the growth that they've had, and providers and the growth of being able to meet that need. So thank you. I think that's all I have to share right now.
Thank you, Nicole. So again, I just want to point out, like, you see this theme, right, of like case managers like, oh, we have this grant, right? They're setting an employment first culture, and they're getting people trained, familiar with the services. They're building capacity with providers to actually be able to then, when the case managers are excited to try to support people to get employment, they have somebody to refer them to. So it's kind of all that infrastructure that they're doing. And I want to especially point out, because everybody was so worried and about the 245D licensing moratorium and this project, because there's such a need for employment services providers across the state, not just in the 6 counties that are part of the grant. And they did get an exception to the 245D licensing moratorium based on geographical need. And so I want everyone to hear that is a possibility. And if you have questions about how that worked, you can feel free to reach out to MTI, and we can answer questions. I'm sure Nicole would also be willing to answer questions. But just know that it's possible. So.
And it was a quick process. I think it was maybe 10 days to get a response from DHS about it. So it's not a months long or years long process.
Great. Yeah. All right. Let's see. I'm going to look who's next on my screen. I see Holly. How about Holly in Clay County?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Holly Warner with Clay County Social Services, and I supervise our home and community-based disability waiver programs here. For those of you who maybe aren't familiar with Clay County, we are on the kind of the north central west side of the state. We border Fargo, North Dakota. So even though the population of Clay County is around 68,000, Fargo, North Dakota is quite a bit larger. So we're just kind of dealing with some of those uniquenesses around Clay County as far as our size. But so listening to Beth from Big Stone, I feel like we had a lot of similarities when we initially started this grant. We were certainly underutilizing exploration and develop plan under the employment services. I think our data, when we pulled it, we had maybe 7 service authorizations. And as we kind of started to have conversations around the employment grant and what this means and what it looks like in our county, I really learned from my case managers that, we needed to provide a lot of training around these 2 services, because I think the conversations, while maybe they were happening, the idea was we just move right to someone finding a job and making a referral to VRS or authorizing find. So that was kind of an interesting takeaway. But as we kind of got going and provided some training, we also did a RFP to contract with one of our local employment service providers to work alongside us with our action plan and carrying out our goals and strategies. So we have 4 employment service providers here in Clay County. They all have all 3 employment services under their 245D license. But like I said, we were really underutilizing exploration and planning. So we've contracted with a local provider to help us with parts of our grant. One being, which I think has been very exciting and appreciative from our case managers, is having this employment agency attend annual meetings to talk about the employment services or kind of that person's employment journey, to help really provide that education and navigate those conversations with the case manager and the person in their team to explore where the person is at with employment. And so with that, we have increased our service authorizations for exploration and development plan from, like, I think it was 7 initially to anywhere from 22 to 28 per month. So we've seen a huge jump, as well as increasing capacity for our employment service providers. We also found that they were struggling with maybe implementing the service or having staff available to provide the service. So as we kind of got going and providing more technical assistance to them and training, we've really been able to build that capacity as well with multiple employment providers in our county. Prior to that, we had one that was doing it fairly well. So So that has been super exciting. Case managers they really are embracing this and seeing the importance of employment for the people that they're working with and how this can really benefit them in the long run. And really it's more about, where is the person at with employment? Are they even willing to consider it? Because if it is maybe something that's just maybe a little bit on their radar, let's look at exploration and just talk that through. So it really doesn't need to be, yes, I want to work. It can be, I guess I don't know if I want to work. Maybe that's something I should look into. And then authorizing the appropriate service for that. So that was a big piece we were missing. But through the training, through the conversations, and bringing in our employment service provider to help us navigate those conversations, we've really seen an increase in authorizing these services and people just even being interested in considering employment. So I think that's been the biggest takeaway. We've got other things we're working on with the grant, but that piece I think is a little unique to Clay County and really has been pretty impactful in the way we're delivering our services.
Great. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, it's really unique because, I think in the beginning, and we hear this a lot across the state, case managers are just a little bit still uncomfortable and unsure about how to have those conversations. It often is the case that people will say, no, that's not for me, or that's not for my son or daughter. And the case managers have been like, how do I move past that? And how do I keep these conversations going? And having that employment services provider, not acting in the role as an employment services provider, but as an employment services expert, come into those annual meetings, they can help the case manager through those talking points. And it's also a way that case managers are learning then, so that, sustainability factor, right? Like after the grant, they'll know the information and they'll be able to continue having those conversations because they've had such a good example and they've had support in those meetings. So, okay. Thank you, Holly. Let's see, who do I see next? How about Deb Rocco from Hennepin County?
Good morning. I'm Deb Rocco, and I am a lead for our lead agency capacity building grant. And I have a couple of PowerPoint slides because I don't like to look at myself. So I'm going to see if I can navigate my technology here and get those up for you. I don't know that I'm in presenter mode. Let me just see here. Nope. Okay. Well, I'm just gonna go with it. So I'm not sure if you're seeing a weird view or not, but yeah. So one of the things that we're really excited about is that we have had an effort to have all of our assessors, both our initial assessors and annual assessors, as well as our case managers, take the Benefits 101 training. And we're also working with our contracted case management agencies for taking that as well and being able to reimburse them for their time when they're doing that training, because that's not something that's a billable thing for them. And the feedback has just been incredibly positive. One of the things that's really exciting for me is since I'm a program manager in initial assessments and I used to work in our annual assessments area, when we first started talking about this and having assessors be part of this, I heard a lot of comments from assessors like, well, isn't that really a case manager role? And so it really helped us to kind of understand how people were thinking and to be able to turn that around. And now I am hearing from assessors how much they liked having this training and how happy they are that they're getting this knowledge and they're thinking in a different way about employment, but especially those conversations they have during the assessment with people about employment. And so that has been really exciting. And there's just a couple of comments there, that we heard. One of them got to DHS. I'm not even sure how, but DHS shared it with us. That the assessor spoke very highly of the training. So, and then we also heard from one of our annual assessment program managers that her teams are just learning a lot from the benefits training and felt that the training was well done. and they just feel more comfortable talking about employment supports and benefits. So we were really happy to hear that. And I'm sure, you know, as we roll this out with contracted case managers too, it will be capturing responses on that as well. And we have some polls that we'll be doing pre-poll and after poll that kind of tracks how they're feeling in terms of having these conversations around benefits with people. And then the other thing that we're super excited about is on April 13th from 3 to 7 p.m. at Embassy Suites in Minneapolis, we are having an inclusive employment connections networking event. So this in-person event is focused to build employment connections for people with disabilities. We're going to have a photographer doing free professional headshots. We're going to have a panel of people who are employed talking about their experiences with work and how they got there and what they're, you know, loving about it. We're going to have service providers, local businesses, ARC's peer-to-peer program will be there, and just different presentations on employment. And I think we're going to do some fun things, some raffles and different things as well. So, and we're getting a lot of registrants, which we're really happy about. We've been trying to share the information out, you know, through various formats. I know it's on our social media for Hennepin County. We've been sending out flyers, you know, via email and mail to people that we've identified are students that are graduating soon. This is for everyone in all ages, but it is kind of more focused toward students that are graduating and kind of taking those first steps in the employment world. So that will be happening. And then just in addition, we are going to be holding, we're calling them facilitated conversations, but we're going to be holding sessions with our contracted case managers and our operated case managers where we discuss the employment training that they're required to take from DHS to look at ways that they're integrating that into their practice, to hear their success stories, to learn more about their barriers so they can share with each other strategies to address that and just how you have those conversations. So I know, I believe our first one is going to be May 5th, and we're planning to do those quarterly and kind of target case managers who maybe are more newly hired and have recently taken the training, although any case manager can attend the facilitated conversations. So we have that coming up. We've done a number of sessions with providers, employment providers from Hennepin County, just to learn about what barriers are they seeing in terms of helping people gain competitive employment. And then we've been analyzing that information and working on strategies of how can we address that? How can we mitigate those barriers? We just started hosting some sessions where we're meeting with students to also share information with them about employment, what their options are, and just kind of to hear their thoughts and their questions. So that just, I believe it might have been last week that we had our first session, or actually I think it was Monday of this week, and we've had a couple of those. So I don't know yet. We haven't heard all the comments or information yet. So we'll be looking at that as well from those sessions. And then we're going to be doing some sessions with case managers, some sessions with parents, guardians, family members, and then also sessions with teachers. And we have contracted with Nicole Rabinowitz with Inclusive Networking, who has been helping us both with development of presentations for the sessions and also facilitating the sessions. So that's been really nice to be able to partner with her. And then the last thing that I was going to share, I already lost my train of thought on it. But anyway, yeah, I know what it was. So we were able to hire 2 full-time positions having these grant funds. And so we have a senior planning analyst and a senior administrative assistant. And I want to say that for those of you who are doing this work and haven't hired additional staff, I don't even understand how you're doing it. I know we are a much larger county, so we have some differences in that way, but I know about a third of my time now is devoted to this grant, as well as Debbie Ackerman, who is the sponsor for the grant. And we have 2 full-time staff and a whole team of people. And it's a lot of work, but we're really excited to be doing it. It's just one of the, I don't know, my favorite parts of the day. And just coming to a meeting like this is a highlight in my day because it's really positive and energizing. It's not at all like the budget meetings I'm in. So I'm really happy to be a part of doing this work. And I do think, we are just seeing kind of that shift in people putting this more as a focus, because we all know case managers, assessors, all of us. So we just have so many things that we have to look at, support people with, and address. And so this is something that can easily just kind of get minimized. And we're seeing that now it's being highlighted. So really happy about that.
Me too. Thanks, Deb. It's so great to hear. I want to point out one thing I put in the chat. The first thing that Deb talked about was that they had their case managers and their certified assessors. It's in the benefits planning toolkit, and it's called Level 1 Training, the Basics. And we've talked about it before in this group, so I won't go on and on about it, but all 6 lead agencies have had all of their case managers take that training, and we're pulling together some summary data that we'll be able to share with you in the next couple of months, I'm hoping. But it's awesome. I mean, one of the hardest conversations that case managers have to have is about benefits and work. And it's hard, not only because people are so, benefits are their lifeline, right? It's the most important thing to them, and they don't want anything to mess it up. And it's also hard because it's so complicated. And so when case managers have taken this training that takes them between 30 and 45 minutes, they are like hands down, like 90%, I'm talking like a ton more confident having these benefits and work conversations after they've taken that training. So that's what that is. And then, she talked a lot about all the different community engagement they're doing. The providers, they put a call out, they want more providers that are willing to do employment services, right? Even Hennepin County needs more providers to do this. And they had 26 providers respond to a survey that said, I want to provide more employment services, yes. And we're bringing them together and we're going to support them to increase their capacity. The power of a lead agency asking for providers to provide these services, I cannot overstate it enough. It's really, really important. So thank you, Deb. I think we'll go next to Kristen. Kristen in Stearns County. You're here, right?
I'm here. Hello.
Hello.
I feel like I should have just been keeping track of what everyone was saying and said, yep, what Holly said, yep, what Nicole said. Because I think that, which is nice to see that a lot of us are doing, many of the same things. So I'm going to pull up my stuff and try to just, hit the highlights of stuff that we've already done and kind of talk about maybe something different. So all our case managers did that, did the required case manager, the big employment training that feels like it takes an eternity, plus did the 101. And I agree, like the basics, when they did that, they were like, oh, okay, I did know more than I thought I did, or at least to be able to start the conversation. I think that was always the scariest thing for people is I don't even know what to say. What if I say the wrong thing? So that's exciting to do that. Heather Iliff is my partner. I'm a supervisor of one of our waiver units, and usually Heather and I like to go back to back because then we can say I'm the other waiver supervisor. But our units are a little different. Mine has more of the mental health and the physical disabilities. Hers has more with the different functioning levels and more the autism and some of those. It houses the DD waiver. So we have differences in what our case managers are really looking at and who they're talking to when they're talking about this stuff. So Heather and I really started out looking at what is in our area that, for providers, because in St. Cloud, we have, 3 counties that touch us. And so a lot of overlap and a lot of, I think, access to some providers that are kind of right next door. So we reached out to anyone in our area that had already had employment on their on their license and just started the conversation, what are you doing with it? What is happening? What supports do you need? What can we provide? And to try to see what we can do. In our research, we found a culturally specific Somali provider, Living Hope, of Minnesota, and they're really interested in growing and expanding, and I think would be able to take kind of that more culturally specific approach while meeting needs of the general population that we serve, as well. So that was pretty exciting, and they've been pretty responsive to work with. So we met with the identified providers. I think there were 7 of them, but then as soon as I said 7, I thought maybe 8, but I think there's 7. To do a meet and greet, review interest and capacity. We were able then to bring them into kind of a larger group with everybody there to review the benefits and resources in the area. Don and Dominique are working with those teams and have met with those identified as well for the capacity building. And Molly did some of that benefits training. So really, it's exciting to be able to expand and get somebody kind of new and fresh on the scene with doing that. And so we're now at the point of being able to have more conversations about accepting more referrals and really expanding that. So that's a good spot to be. We also have what I think, Andrea, you had referred to this. I put it in quotes when I put my notes together of a legacy provider. So I kind of like that because anyone who's like on my team that I'm like, you're our seasoned veteran, they're like, please don't say that. That makes me feel uncomfortable. So I think I'm going to start calling people legacy staff and see how that goes. But there's somebody who's been in our area for a long, long time. Wacosa is who I'm referring to with that. I don't know if anyone outside of our area, how much they know, but they will have, in-house employment. They have a store where people are able to work at. They do, shift work, get people out in the community and, finding kind of those competitive integrated employment, other jobs too. So they're really, able to do a little bit more. They were the ones who answered our RFP to kind of be the one that's doing the things for the grant. We had a meeting with them this week to look at, what are next steps, what are more things that can be done. They've done some partnership with vocational rehab with getting some education and some supports. And so just still working on trying to get some of that stuff done. Through the funding that they got with the RFP, they were able to get a van for that to help with some of those employment things. So that was exciting too. When we were looking at some of the bills coming in, I'm like, I feel like there should be more. I think there should be there was a big ticket item. We're not seeing it. And it came like in the next billing thing, because that was an exciting thing that they had put in their response to be able to do that. This group is also going to be the ones that are going to be helping partner with us and spearhead to some extent the school outreach and helping identify, how we can communicate with the schools, what we need to do to try to get the ball rolling, or at least the conversation started when we need to start it, and not kind of let's hurry up and squish it in at the end, which I think happens far too often. We also had conversation about helping identify some of those culturally specific employers and organizations that, we have some that everyone says off the top of their head that they know these places can do that. But hoping Wacosa can help us develop, who is a bigger, more comprehensive list that we can look at as well across our area. I feel like I talked really fast. I think the caffeine surge hit me about 10 minutes ago. So forgive me if that felt a little frantic.
Thank you, Kristen. Thank you. So I think just like a couple things to note, like, first of all, back to the benefit stuff she talked about. I'm glad you mentioned this. One of the other things that the lead agencies that are part of this grant have been doing is we've also been working with their providers and talking to them and introducing the benefits toolkit on the hub, and having them commit to taking not just level 1 benefits training, but also the level 2 benefits training. Because case managers are having those initial conversations, they also need to be able to refer them to a provider to have deeper conversations about benefits and work. And we've heard across the state, a lot of the providers are like, we don't have training for that. We don't know how to do that either. And so now through this work, a lot of the lead agencies are getting providers to commit to having staff go through that training and be available for that. And so that's another really great just one thing I wanted to underscore and point out. And then the legacy provider, like how genius is that? That they got grant funds from this grant, and they did an RFP, and they selected a legacy provider, and they pulled them into all this stuff about culture change, about training, about interagency coordination, reaching out to other providers to try to recruit, and talk about like a way to like incent and get somebody kind of close to the inside to start wanting to be part of this change and make it happen. So anyway, pretty cool stuff that's happening there as well. Thank you, Kristen. And then last but certainly not least is Tasia from McLeod County.
Good morning, everybody. I am Tasia with McLeod County. I am a DD case manager and the lead for our employment grant. So how our agency had decided to utilize our time was there were 2 of us. There was originally a DD case manager and a CCB case manager that kind of shared the workload of the grant. We both were able to drop our case management caseload size down maybe by like a quarter or a third of our caseload to make room for us to be able to utilize our time specifically for the grant. So we meet at least once a week, if not more than that, throughout other meetings. And kind of one of our biggest hurdles, I mean, I can piggyback pretty much what everyone else has already shared. But one of our biggest hurdles was when we would set up individual meetings with some of our providers, as many of them were they were to the point of like they wanted to provide the service. Either they didn't have staff or they couldn't get the community employers on board. You know, they couldn't get the buy-in, is what we would hear many times from some of the employment providers, is, you know, trying to build those connections with them. So we really tried to take a community approach for a big portion of our time and trying to change the culture of our community. And changing just how people are navigating those dynamics. So initially we had very quickly set up regular meetings with all of our local employment providers and with VRS. I think some of our case managers already had a pretty decent relationship with our VRS counselor, but kind of really opening up that door so that all the employment providers knew who the VRS counselor was, and kind of just building that working dynamic between all of them. So we meet every other month with that group. And we've really, it's been a really fun process to watch, because Jenny and I, who we've done this process together, initially we're like, we don't do we put everyone in one room? Like, we didn't want it to make it a competition type thing of bringing all the providers to one space. And I'm so glad we did, because it's really brought out a mentality of teamwork just amongst all the providers. We really try to share the load across all of the entities as much as we can. Jenny and I are currently creating like an editable document where all of the employment providers will have access to. So if we hear of job openings or someone on our caseload quit their job, we're able to kind of put that on a document of, now there's a dishwasher position at McDonald's open. All of the other employment providers are able to see that and view it. It kind of builds the continuity of care almost for the employers too. So they're not going long-term with having open positions. And we have multiple providers that are able to see, like, oh, I have someone who I'm working with that is really looking for that type of a position, and they can kind of jump in right away and kind of fill those gaps on a quicker basis. So we're working on doing that currently. Our other big community connection has really been with our local chambers. So we have been setting up meetings with all of our local chambers within McLeod County. And that has been going really, really well. And actually on our first meeting with them, they had actually everything we wanted to have come out of the meeting, they had presented it to us. So it was like a perfect coordination of going back and forth on like, let's put together a round table. Let's get employers there. Let's get employment providers there. Let's get our consumers and their families there, sharing success stories, explaining how our services work, and really changing the culture of our community has really been one of the biggest hurdles that we've been pushing through. We're currently working on developing a flyer to send out to all of the businesses in McLeod County, just to kind of plant that seed on like, this is what we're doing. These are some services we can offer. I mean, I don't know about everywhere across the state, but for our area, I mean, we have many job postings constantly. Businesses are always looking for people. And so really just trying to kind of open their eyes and their ears to the opportunity to just hear us out and listen to us. So eventually we're hoping to get in front of doing this roundtable event. Ideally, it would be great if we could do it at all of our chambers, or make it a county-wide event. But yeah, so those are kind of the community steps that we're taking to broaden people's perspectives of our services.
Thank you, Tasia. And I just one thing you didn't say that I want to say is that one of the chamber directors is actually calling all of the members of her chamber and telling them that McLeod County has this effort and that we're working on getting people with disabilities hired. And if they have any job openings or any questions, to call Tasia and Jenny. And so they're actually getting calls from local businesses from the chamber referral. So I know we're like right at time, so we didn't really have that much time for questions. I'm sorry about that, but I'll turn it back over to you, Christy, for however you want to wrap it up.
Yeah, thanks. I am so glad you were all able to join and talk about that. That's a really exciting work that you all are doing, and it's all having huge impacts. So excellent. If this is something that we can always add it to another meeting if people are interested in talking through it, having more questions. So we can certainly do that. But yeah, we're at time. So thank you for joining. I did see a message about sending out some information for the Hennepin County's inclusive meeting next week on the 13th. Sorry, I'm blanking on words right now. But we'll send that out and go from there. So thanks again, everyone. We will we can send that as well, that PowerPoint from MTI. So we'll send that out in the next day or two.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks to the 6 lead agencies for presenting. See you guys later.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.